see you all today. Yeah. Yeah, everyone's turn. Either
check.
Yeah, they both work. Okay, you do good one. All right.
Check.
So, the elderly man sitting on a park bench.
Just watching the world go by. And there, across the walkway, a little boy came, sat down on the opposite park bench, pulled out a candy bar, full-size candy bar, unwrapped it, ate the whole thing in one bite. The old man was amazed. He was even more amazed when the boy proceeded to pull out a second, third, fourth, full-size candy bar and swallow them whole. And as the boy was pulling out his fifth candy bar, the old man said, "Excuse me there. We don't know each other, but I just can't help thinking, I don't think all that candy could really be good for you." The old boy looked at him and said, "You know, old man, my grandfather lived to be 107 years old." The old man said, "Huh, did he eat a lot of candy?" The little boy said, "My grandfather lived to be 107 by minding his own damn business." Well, good morning. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming out in the gray and the snow today. Welcome to this place which we make holy by our presence. These doors are open to all. We welcome diverse ideas about the source of life, diverse needs, diverse abilities. Bring your brokenness and bring your personal glow, your fears and anxieties, loves and hopes, for here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, where the human is celebrated, where compassion is strength. Welcome to this place. Together we make it a holy place. Please join me for the words of the chalice lighting, which are printed inside of our leaflet. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Now please stand if you are able for hymn 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
And to rejoice and
Instead of a responsive reading today, I'm going to share a short story from the Haudenosaunee, from the indigenous peoples of Western New York. And this story is called What the Ash and the Maple Learned. Long ago, birds, trees, animals, and people knew each other's languages and could talk together. In those days, the trees of the forest grew very large and strong. At last, they came to know their strength too well. They became selfish and proud and quarrelsome. Each tree boasted that he was the greatest and the strongest. Each one struggled to gain for himself the most earth, the best air, the brightest sun. No tree had a thought for the other. One day, the trunk of a great maple tried to crowd out an ash tree. The ash, of course, thought he had as much right to stand there as the maple and would not stir a limb. "Get out of my way," said the maple. "I am greater than you and of more use to people, for I provide the sweet water for them to drink." "Indeed, I will not," said the ash. "I am greater than you and of more use to people, for I furnish the tough wood from which man makes his bow." At this, the trees fell to wrestling. Back and forth, in and out they swayed, each trying to throw the other. They forgot that they were brothers in the forest. The maple threw his huge trunk against the ash, who sent the maple back with a great push of his strong elbow. For a time, the south wind watched them writhe and twist and try to throw each other to the ground. Then the south wind said softly, "You, maple, do not cause the sweet water to flow for people, nor do you, ash, make your wood to grow pliant and tough for their bows." "Who does then?" they asked defiantly. "Listen," said the south wind, "and you will hear." Then the maple and the ash stopped their quarrel. They bent their heads so low and close to listen that an arm of the maple slipped through an arm of the ash. And as they stood thus listening, each with an arm locked in an arm of the other, the south wind gently swayed them to and fro. Then a voice was heard singing, "The mother of all things." Thus it was that the ash and the maple learned it was the Mother Earth who gave them their life and power, who gave them their strength, and that they were brothers because they had one mother. The ash and the maple whispered this secret to the birds. The birds came and listened to the voice and went and told the animals. The animals came and listened and went and told the people. And thus all of the earth children learned that there is one great mother of every living thing, and that all are siblings. And now whenever two trees lock arms lovingly, and the south wind sways them gently to and fro, that same voice can be heard singing, "The mother of all things." This is the time in our service when we share our joys and sorrows from this week that's passing, this week that's coming. I invite you to take a moment, think about if there's something that you would like to share with the congregation. And if you do, I invite you to come up and light a candle and place it in our font here. And the microphone is here.
Good morning, everybody. I have a couple of things that I want to mention today. One of them is I received a call last night from Bonnie Soley, who used to be a member of this church. She and Bill were very active, and they moved to New Mexico. Unfortunately, just yesterday, their daughter, Christine, passed away very suddenly. And Bonnie asked me if I would mention it in church today, and you would keep her and Bill in your hearts, and as they are grieving. And also, I know it's a very tender subject for many people here in this church, as you have also suffered such a loss. So I light this candle for Christine.
Well, this is another one of those opportunities to say thanks. We have, and I think this church has the best snacks at coffee hour. Now, here's a kind of a mundane thing, but it's really true. I swear, of any church I've ever been to, this one has absolutely the best snacks at coffee hour of anyone I've ever seen. I mean, to the point, we have nice little wraps and sandwiches at times. It all depends on the creativity of the person making it possible, and that varies week to week, which adds to the delight. We get a little surprised that way. Today's offerings are provided by Wally and Kathy. I was downstairs. I got a preview of this, and it is totally in the highest tradition of this institution. That we have marvelous snacks for those who are able to stay for coffee, and it's something that puts a smile on your face every Sunday, and I feel good about it, and I hope you do too. So anyway, I'm going to light a candle in thanks for Wally, Kathy, and all the others who contribute in this way to this grand endeavor.
Okay, so he's got a joy, I've got a concern, which is, I brought my 4 kids. They're in the basement. So my concern is just for all of you, be careful on the stairs, but you do want to move quickly, because when the snacks come out, there's going to be 4 little people. But I don't feel like we need to light a candle.
I just thought a really good idea might be to have a moment's silence or prayer or meditation, because our Bill is going for is it surgery? Yeah, and I know that must be really stressful for you. Yeah. Let's keep him in our hearts.
I was waiting for Patty to do this. Patty and I had a delightful visit with Betsy and Peter on Wednesday. We were there for about 3 hours. We brought them some lunch, and we were happy to see they were both dressed very spiffily, and they had set the table. There were placemats. They had the table all set. There was a vase of flowers in the middle, and we had a nice 3-hour visit. Our excuse was doing stewardship stuff. And Betsy came up with our catchphrase for this one, and it's a gas.
God forbid you should miss a word. I've got the microphone. I just wanted to say I was going to mention at announcements that when it comes to snacks after church, if you hopefully you will have time to stop downstairs, because there's going to be a plate of Nan Simon's famous cookies, and to honor John's sermon theme, maple cookies downstairs for coffee hour. So I just wanted you to know that, and hopefully the service won't be too long today.
But just to be clear, there's not a plate of cookies like sitting out in plain sight downstairs, is there? Okay. It's all right. Okay, during the offertory, I'm going to go and just make sure that that the young people know to keep their mitts off the cookies. But I am going to light one more candle for those joys and concerns that we are holding inside and not quite ready to share yet. This is the time of the offertory when we share our gifts for the good of the congregation. Elizabeth and I have a lot in common, which is a relief because I didn't know her that well when I proposed. We had never been on a date or spoken on the phone or even kissed. She was my sister's friend. We had been introduced a few times. And each time I met her, I thought, yep, that's the girl I'm going to marry. But neither of us was available. So when I heard that she was single, I hopped a train, left the trailer in the Virginia forest, showed up at her Manhattan apartment, and said, I think we should have children together. And her eyes got wide with surprise, and she said, do you mean get married? And I said, well, of course get married. And she said yes, and we've been together for 18 years. I sometimes sort of think of it as an arranged marriage, like God or love goddesses or ancestral ghosts set this up. And that's good because statistically, arranged marriages tend to last longer than the ones that people pick for themselves. So she and I became engaged and then got romantically involved. And it was a pleasant surprise to find that we have a lot in common. But there are a few areas in which we cannot find common ground, and one of them is pancake syrup. She prefers genuine maple, the watery, flowing, real thing, while I prefer the fake butter-flavored slime. She likes the glass bottle shaped like an old moonshine jug. I like the squeeze bottle shaped like Mrs. Butterworth. Elizabeth can't believe it. How can I be so scholarly in my choice of reading and so hillbilly in my choice of pancake topping? She reminds me, it's not even made out of maple. It's corn syrup. And I remind her that corn sugar is just as natural as tree sap. Corn and maple have a long history here in Western New York. The indigenous cultures, known as the Haudenosaunee, whom we might know as the Iroquois, lived mostly on corn that they farmed, and it was often sweetened with maple sugar. In some indigenous cultures, trees are known as the standing peoples, citizens in the community of life, neighbors of the human communities. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants, Robin Wall Kimmerer wrote, my Onondaga neighbors call the maple the leader of the trees. Trees constitute the Environmental Quality Committee, running air and water purification. They create habitat for songbirds and wildlife cover, golden leaves to shuffle through, tree forts and branches for swings. Centuries of their falling leaves have built this soil. And how much of the oxygen in our valley comes from our maples? How much carbon is taken from the atmosphere and stored away? She writes, we can assign an economic value to maple timber or gallons of syrup, but ecosystem services are far more precious, and yet these services go unaccounted for in the human economy. Some historians say that the maple tree played a vital role in an ancient Haudenosaunee exodus movement. Centuries ago, long before the Europeans arrived in the Americas, the ancestors of the Iroquois migrated from the meeting place of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Ohio rivers to the eastern woodlands. But the refugees found themselves overpowered and oppressed by a cruel tribe whom they called Adirondacks. a Mohawk word meaning the bark eaters. This epithet comes from their habit of eating dried tree bark, flavored with the oil of slaughtered animals and sometimes people. These cannibals forced the immigrants to serve them until a group of women devised a plan of escape, throwing boiled maple sap into the faces of their captors. They ran and found safety in the Genesee Valley. Mohawk activist Dan Longboat said, "The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and uses. Our Creator has made all things with a purpose, a duty, and a responsibility. And few things carry their responsibility with as much grace and beauty as the trees." The maple is said to be the leader of the standing peoples of the forest, and this is because, like a good leader, it is the first to show its generosity. In a story told by Mohawk elder Tom Porter, the Creator said, once the snow starts to melt, that maple tree is the first one that's going to wake up. Its blood is going to start to flow. And you can cook it, that sap, and it turns into a sweet syrup. And you can even make sugar out of it. And then throughout the year, you will use that sweetness of the maple to put in other food, to make it nice and sweet and good. As bare forest trees sleep through winter, the maple must awaken early so that its buds can sprout new leafy branches to soak up the summer sunlight. So the maple buds huddle, poised to spring into action. And once their light sensors pick up the first sign of lengthening days, at just around this time of year, they send urgent messages to the roots, which have been storing starch. It's time to shrink those starch particles into sugar, liquefy it, and send it up the trunk's long veins to feed the new growth at the top. The tree makes a lot of this sugar water, enough to share with other inhabitants of the forest. Some say that people first learned about maple sugar from watching squirrels. As the long New York winter wears on and the supply of stored acorns runs low, squirrels will begin to gnaw on maple bark and drink the sap that flows from it. And returning the next day, a diligent squirrel will find that sugar crystals have formed on that spot. And then they can nibble at that for sustenance. The peoples of New York took this a step further. Sap gatherers would cut a shallow slit into the trunk about 3 feet from the ground and insert a reed or bark funnel to guide the flow of liquid into a barrel. These barrels or buckets were often a hollowed section of a tree, and these buckets of raw sap could be poured into long, sled-like troughs, also made from hollowed trees. And then the thin liquid had to be distilled and concentrated. So in the nights, it was left to freeze, and the water rising to the top, while the sugar condensed below. And in the morning, a sheet of ice could be removed from the top. And then in daylight, more water could be removed by boiling. This was done by heating stones in a fire, ladling them into the trough, and heating the syrup to evaporate liquid. It's a lengthy process. Processing 40 gallons of sap into a single gallon of syrup. But it wasn't constant work. It allowed plenty of time for conversation and storytelling. Finally, this dense concoction at the bottom of the trough could be shaped into puck-like discs or pounded into sugar for storage in birch bark wallets. And this would become the sugar supply for the year ahead. You could keep this all year in the longhouse. When the maple begins its upward growth process, the bark absorbs solar heat to help move the sugars upward from the roots to the top. And this warmth will melt a ring in the snow around the trunk, a clear sign that sugar season has begun. In Haudenosaunee belief, the sweetness ascending from the ground upward through this tree is a sign from the Creator that the covenant with humanity has been renewed. So villagers will gather in a circle around a large maple and give thanks to it by burning tobacco and incense. Just as sugar rises from underground to the surface, this fragrant smoke will rise from the earth to the sky, and a faith keeper will offer a thanksgiving song to the tree and to the Creator. Then a campsite would be established, which might be occupied for several weeks as the trees were tapped and the sap condensed. Returning from the sugar camp to the village in early spring for corn planting, the villagers would bring not only sugar, but also medicines. Maple leaves and bark could be boiled into a tea to ease liver and spleen problems. Maple tonics could be used to stabilize blood flow and clear blockages from vital organs. The sugar could be melted in water to make a cough syrup or to soothe an upset stomach. And we can forget that sweetness is also medicinal. We today have access to so much processed or synthesized sugar that we don't necessarily think of it as medicine. We might even think of it as the opposite, since the amount of sugar we consume can be very dangerous to us. But the reason we love sweet foods is that they can make us feel happier and more energetic. We still use treats medicinally. Maybe if our sugar came from a relationship with a tree instead of from a grocery store, we could appreciate it as spiritual medicine instead of just a guilty pleasure. The maple is the leader of trees because it is the most generous. It may be hard for us to imagine a tree as a role model because humans and plants are so different. The tree reaches deep into the ground and long into the past, high into the sky with a lengthy possible future ahead, while humans have a short time to live and share our stories. And yet both are capable of strong resolve and quiet dignity. As Oneida educator Pam Colorado wrote, there is a lot we can learn from the standing peoples of the forest. The tree collects, stores, and exchanges energy. It breathes with the winds, which tumble and churn through greenery exquisitely fashioned to purify, codify, and imprint life in successive concentric rings, the generations. Passing maple trees on my drive here today, I got to thinking, a sugar maple can live 400 years. So some little helicopter seed that danced on the wind and touched down in 1623 could have grown into a tree, provided sugar for the indigenous peoples, witnessed the first English settlements, and it could still be there, providing essential services, removing carbon from the air, holding the soil together, and providing sweet sap for maple sugar and syrup. We, the people in this room, might not have 400 years ahead of us. But in the time that we do have, we can work to hold steady, to provide some stability and continuity, to leave the campsite a little cleaner than we found it, and to share some sweetness with each other. Thank you.
That was nice, John.
Thank you. That's great, because look at this. I really was thinking about it on the ride here. This is my ending that I wrote when I arrived. I was driving with 4 kids, bickering in the back seat about who was poking who or looking at who. And I was like, oh man, you know, we need some sweetness in this world. All right. Please stand if you are able for hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard nights. If you cannot sing like the angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard nights.
Do we have any announcements today? Yes, please.
Next week, we have a wonderful speaker. His name is Bob Giannetti. He's a poet. Right now, the poor man is traveling to, or has traveled to Baja, California to see pods of whales. So he should be back the day before, hopefully. And he's a real treat, so pass the word, please, that Bob is going to be here. Thank you.
Do we have any other announcements today? All right. And I am excited to announce that at 12:30 we will have an adult education session. I think this is really fascinating. We're going to be looking at a Native American, indigenous attitudes about gender and sexuality, and we will find that many indigenous cultures of North America have 3 or 4 different genders. So I think that's going to be really interesting for us to look at. So I hope that we'll enjoy a nice lunch together, and that some of you will come back at 12:30. Together, we have sanctified this space. If you have found strength and comfort here, share some out there. They need it. Remember that you are blessed, and you are a blessing, and you are not alone. Please join me for the words of the chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Gosh, oh, then they can't hear you on Zoom. Hello, hello.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you, must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, when the valley's hushed and white with snow. I will be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. But when you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. And I shall hear the soft tread above me, and all my grief will sweeter be. For you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me. And I shall sleep in peace until you come